The night was painted in crimson. A full moon hung above the city like a bleeding eye, watching every secret unfold beneath its light. Inside the Vorton mansion, silence ruled. The marble halls that once echoed with laughter now held their breath, as if the walls themselves feared what was about to happen. The Alpha stood by the window, his silhouette carved against the storm. Raphael Vorton, ruthless, untouchable, the king of the underworld. Rain slid down the glass like the ghosts of sins he couldn't wash away. And yet, even monsters had hearts. And his heart beat for the one person he could never claim. The door creaked open. A figure stepped in quietly. Eliur, the Omega servant, the one Raphael had sworn to keep away from. He moved like a whisper, pale skin glowing under the red light, his scent soft and familiar. The one thing that could break an Alpha's control. "Why are you here?" Raphael's voice was low, dangerous. His hand clenched around the glass of whiskey, knuckles white. He didn't look at him, couldn't. Not tonight. Eliur's eyes lifted slowly. There was no fear there, only pain and something deeper. "You said the blood moon was dangerous," he whispered. "But you never said for whom." The Alpha's chest tightened. He turned at last, and the world outside, the storm, the wind, the fire, fell silent. Eliur stood there, drenched from the rain, trembling but defiant. His lips quivered, not from cold, but from holding back everything he'd never dared to say. "I don't want to hide anymore, Raphael," he breathed. "Even if it kills me." Raphael took a step forward, then another. The air grew heavy, scent of danger, scent of desire. "Do you know what you're saying?" he murmured, his voice shaking now. "If they find out, they'll kill us both." Eliur's eyes glistened. "Then let them," he said softly. "But I'd rather die once in your arms than live 1,000 nights pretending I never felt this." The thunder cracked above them. The moon turned darker, redder, as if the heavens themselves were warning them. But Raphael no longer cared. He cupped Eliur's face with blood-stained hands, trembling as he leaned closer. "I've killed men for less than what I feel for you," he whispered. "You make me weak, Eliur." Eliur smiled faintly through his tears. "Then be weak. Just tonight." Their lips met, slow, desperate, a collision of forbidden souls. The storm howled louder, shaking the windows, lightning cutting through the night. Somewhere, deep inside Raphael's chest, a promise was born, and a curse awakened. When they finally pulled apart, Eliur rested his forehead against his chest, heartbeat against heartbeat. The Alpha whispered into his hair, his voice breaking, "The world will burn for this." And under the blood moon's crimson glow, a single night of passion sealed a fate written in tragedy. The rain had stopped, but the silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Days passed since the night of the blood moon, yet its memory clung to Eliur like a haunting melody, soft, forbidden, unforgettable. The mansion had returned to its cold rhythm. Guards at every door, whispers in every corner. But within those stone walls, something fragile had begun to grow, something that could never be allowed to exist. Eliur sat alone in the small servants' quarters at the back of the estate. His trembling hands rested over his stomach, the faintest curve beneath his fingers. Invisible to the world, but to him, it was everything. A child. Raphael's child. The moment he'd realized, the world had tilted. Joy and terror tangled in his chest, each heartbeat a war between hope and doom. He closed his eyes, tears sliding down his cheeks. "This is wrong," he whispered to the silence. "They'll kill us both if they find out." But when he imagined the child's face, tiny hands, soft laughter, Raphael's fierce eyes, his heart betrayed his fear. He smiled, a small, broken thing, and whispered to the life within him, "Even if no one knows you, I will love you with everything I have." That night, Raphael came to him, not as the Alpha of the Mafia, but as the man who had lost control of his heart. He entered quietly, his eyes searching the dim light for Eliur's face. "Why have you been hiding from me?" he asked, voice heavy with concern. Eliur froze. His fingers instinctively moved to his stomach before he caught himself. I haven't, he lied softly, forcing a smile. I've just been tired. Raphael stepped closer, brushing his thumb against Elior's cheek. Tired? He repeated. You've never lied to me before. Elior's breath hitched. He wanted to tell him, to fall into his arms and confess everything. But fear clawed at him. If the clan found out the Omega carried the Alpha's bloodline, it would mean death for them both. So he lowered his gaze and whispered, Please, Raphael, don't ask me tonight.
Rafael hesitated.
He could feel something had changed. The way Elior's scent had deepened, warmer, softer. But he didn't push. He simply wrapped his arms around him, pressing a kiss into his hair. Whatever you're hiding, he murmured, I'll protect you from it. I swear. Elior's heart shattered, because some secrets couldn't be protected, only buried. In the weeks that followed, the mansion grew colder. Rumors spread through the clan of the Alpha's distraction, his strange absences, his refusal to entertain the chosen Omega brides. And in the shadows, Elior hid, sewing curtains, polishing floors, pretending he was just another servant. But late at night, when the moonlight touched his skin, he whispered to the life inside him, soft lullabies no one else would ever hear. Little one, he breathed, you are my sin and my miracle. Outside, the blood moon faded from the sky, but its curse had already taken root. The night was quiet, too quiet. Outside the mansion, snow fell over the city like a shroud, hiding the blood beneath its white beauty. Inside, behind the servants' quarters, a single candle burned, small, trembling, fighting the darkness that pressed against the walls. Elior lay on the narrow bed, his face pale, his body shaking. Sweat and tears clung to his skin. He bit his lip to stop from crying out. He couldn't let them hear. If anyone discovered him tonight, both he and his child would be dead before dawn. Narration, gentle, emotional tone.
No midwives.
No doctors.
No blessings.
Just an Omega alone, bringing a forbidden life into a world built on hate. Please, he whispered through the pain. Please, little one, stay with me. The candle flickered as thunder rolled somewhere far away. And then, a single cry broke through the silence. Soft, fragile, the sound of life itself. Elior's breath hitched as he gathered the tiny body against his chest. The baby was small, too small. His skin pale like moonlight, his hair dark as night. But when he opened his eyes, they were Raphael's. The same fierce silver gray that once made the world kneel. Tears blurred Elior's vision. He smiled through them, trembling. Shoo! It's all right, he whispered. No one can hurt you here. Not while I'm breathing. He kissed the baby's forehead, tracing every little feature as if trying to memorize him. Because deep down, a part of him already knew the world would never let this child live free. Hours passed. Elior wrapped the baby in an old blanket, humming softly, a lullaby from his childhood. The candle was dying, but the light in his eyes burned with love. You are my secret, he whispered, my sin and my salvation. He closed his eyes, pressing the baby closer to his heart. You have your father's eyes, he said softly, but you'll have my heart. Maybe that will save you. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had happened. The Alpha sat in his study, staring at the moon, feeling a strange ache he couldn't name. Somewhere in the mansion's depths, his legacy had just been born, and he didn't even know it. A knock came at his door. Boss, a guard said quietly. We found traces of blood in the servant's wing. Should we investigate? Raphael frowned, setting down his glass. No, he said after a moment. It's nothing. Leave it. But when the door closed, unease coiled in his gut. He didn't know why. But the night suddenly felt wrong. In the small room below, Elior rocked his child, whispering his name for the first time. Lior, he breathed. It means my light. The baby stirred, eyes half open, and a fragile smile touched Elior's lips. He didn't see the shadow moving outside the window, the one who had followed him, who had seen everything. Within hours, the whispers would reach the clan. By sunrise, the world would call the child a curse, a mistake, a crime that must be erased. But to Elier, as he held his son against his heart, there was only one truth. "You are my hope," he whispered, "even if the world never lets you exist." The dawn came painted in gold, beautiful, deceptive, and cruel. For one brief moment, the Vorton mansion stood silent under the rising sun, its marble walls gleaming as if nothing in the world could touch it. But beneath the beauty, the air was thick with whispers. Servants avoided eye contact. Guards spoke in hushed tones. Somewhere in the shadows, a secret had been discovered, and it was spreading like wildfire. Elier felt it first. That strange, heavy silence before the storm. The kind that makes your chest ache without knowing why. He held little Leor in his arms, rocking him gently, humming the same lullaby that once kept him alive through lonely nights. But today his hands trembled. His instincts screamed danger. Then came the sound. Heavy boots on the floor above. A shout. A crash. The baby whimpered. Elier froze. The door burst open. "There he is!" one of the guards shouted. "The Omega's hiding a child." Elier clutched the baby tighter, backing against the wall. "No," he gasped. "Please, he's just a baby." But the guards were already moving, their faces twisted with disgust. "An Alpha's bastard," one spat. "A cursed one." Before they could reach him, a deep voice thundered from the hall. "Enough!" Everyone froze. Raphael stood in the doorway, eyes cold as steel, coat half-buttoned, fury radiating from every inch of him. The guards bowed instantly, fear crawling down their spines. "Alpha, we found the Omega with a child. The bloodline, it's yours, isn't it?" Raphael's gaze flickered from their faces to Elier, pale, trembling, clutching the tiny bundle protectively. And for a heartbeat, everything stopped. The child opened his eyes. Silver gray. Raphael's eyes. Something inside him shattered. He took a step forward, but Elier flinched back, shaking his head. "Don't," Elier whispered, tears spilling down his cheeks. "You can't protect us now." "Elier." Raphael's voice broke, quiet and desperate. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because they'd kill you," he choked out. "They'd kill him. You can't fight them all, Raphael." "I can," he said, stepping closer. "I will." But behind them, the sound of guns being cocked filled the room. His clan, his own men, had drawn their weapons. "Forgive us, Alpha," one said, voice trembling. "The council ordered this. No Omega-born child may live. It's law." Raphael's chest burned with rage. "Law?" he growled. "You think I bow to law?" He raised his gun. Not at Elier, not at his men, but at the very emblem of his house carved into the wall. And then he fired. The bullet shattered the crest. The room erupted. Smoke, shouting, fire. The oil lamp spilled as bullets ripped through the air. Elier screamed, shielding the baby as flames climbed the curtains. Raphael grabbed them both, dragging them toward the back door. The mansion burned behind them, the empire he built turning to ash. Outside, under a sky choked with smoke, Elier fell to his knees. The baby cried softly, his tiny hands clutching his mother's shirt. Raphael knelt beside them, blood streaking his cheek. "I can still fix this," he said. "We'll run. The three of us." Elier looked up at him, eyes full of love and sorrow. "No, Raphael," he whispered. "You can't save us both." He placed the baby in Raphael's arms, trembling. "Save him, please. Don't let him become like us." Before Raphael could answer, another explosion ripped through the house. Flames lit the night like the blood moon had returned. Elier smiled through his tears, brushing her fingers against the baby's cheek. "Remember," he whispered, "you are not a curse, you are love." And before Raphael could reach him again, the fire roared, swallowing everything in its path. Raphael stood in the burning light, his world collapsing, his heart breaking in his arms. The child cried softly against his chest, the only sound that remained. The Alpha looked back one last time, voice breaking as he whispered into the flames, "I swear, Elier, I'll protect him. even if it means losing everything. And with that vow he walked away, leaving behind the ashes of a home, a love, and a life he could never return to. The sky split open that night. Rain poured from the heavens as if the world itself mourned. Smoke rose from the Vorton estate, black pillars twisting into the clouds, carrying with them the scent of everything that once was love, loyalty, home. Raphael stood in the ruins, clothes torn, face streaked with ash and rain. His empire was gone, but none of it mattered, because somewhere beyond the flames, Elier had vanished into the storm, carrying their child. He stumbled through the wreckage, calling his name. Elier, please, answer me. Only thunder answered. The walls groaned as they collapsed behind him, sparks hissing in the rain. He could still see it, the moment Elier had slipped from his grasp, clutching Lior to his chest, disappearing into the night like a ghost. Raphael ran until his lungs burned, his boots sinking into the mud. And then, through the curtain of rain, he saw him, a lone figure in white, moving through the darkness. Elier, hair drenched, body trembling, but still running, the baby wrapped close against him. Elier, Raphael shouted. The Omega turned for a brief second. Their eyes met, two souls across a storm. Lightning flashed, revealing the tears streaming down his face. He was smiling, that same soft, heartbreaking smile Raphael had fallen for. Protect our son, Elier cried over the wind. Even if I'm gone. Raphael froze. The words hit him like a blade through the heart. And before he could reach him, the ground shook, the bridge ahead collapsing under the weight of the flood. Elier slipped. Raphael leapt forward, but his hands caught only the echo of a cry, and the faint sound of the baby's wail fading into the rain. For a moment the world stood still. The storm raged, the river roared, and Raphael fell to his knees on the broken earth. He pressed his fists into the mud, screaming her name until his voice was gone. But the only answer was thunder, and the cold silence that follows when love dies. When dawn finally came, the fire was out. Only smoke and ruins remained. Raphael walked through the ashes, carrying a single blanket that had washed ashore, the one Elier had wrapped their child in. He held it to his chest, trembling. You asked me to protect him, he whispered, voice breaking. I will. I swear it on your soul. The vow left his lips like a curse. From that moment, the Mafia Alpha everyone feared became a man driven by one thing alone, to keep a ghost's promise. That night, the city saw its most powerful Alpha kneel in the rain for the first time. And in the distance, the blood-red moon faded behind the clouds, as if even the heavens could not bear to watch love die twice. The mansion was rebuilt, but it never lived again. Stone by stone, wall by wall, the Vorton estate rose from its ashes, grand, cold, and silent. Its halls were filled with guards and servants, but no laughter, no warmth. At its center sat a child, Lior, barely 6 years old, quiet as snowfall, with eyes the color of stormlight. Eyes that belonged to a man he had never met. Every year, on the night of the blood moon, he would sneak out of his room with a small candle clutched in his hands. He would go to the garden, the one place untouched by fire, where a single tree still grew among the ruins. There, beneath its shadow, he would kneel, light the candle, and whisper softly, "Happy birthday, Mama." No one ever told him where she was buried. No one dared speak her name. But somehow he knew, that tree, that wind, that silence, it belonged to her. The boy lived surrounded by wealth and fear. Tutors came and went, afraid to meet his gaze. Servants bowed low, whispering behind doors. The cursed child, they called him. The sin that burned the Vortons to ash. And above them all, his father watched from afar. Raphael, the Alpha once feared by empires, had grown colder with time. He rarely spoke, rarely smiled. But on the nights when the boy cried in his sleep, he stood silently outside his door, a shadow in the hall, the protector who could never be a father. One winter night, Lior caught a glimpse of him. He had woken from a nightmare, fire, screams, the sound of his mother's voice calling through smoke. And in the dim light, He saw the tall figure standing near his window, unmoving. "Who are you?" The boy whispered, voice trembling. Raphael froze. He wanted to speak, to say, "I am your father." But the words died on his tongue. All he could manage was a whisper. "Someone who made a promise to keep you safe." Before Lior could ask more, the man was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the corridor. Years passed, and Lior grew into a young man with the same quiet fire his parents once carried. He trained, studied, and learned the cruel rules of the world he was born into, a world that never wanted him. But he never forgot that shadow in the hall, or the warmth he had never known. On his 16th birthday, he went again to the tree in the ruins. Rain drizzled softly as he lit his candle. "Happy birthday, Mama," he whispered. His voice broke, a mix of boyish innocence and pain too old for his age. He looked up at the gray sky and added, "And to the man who never came, I forgive you, even if you never knew how to love me." The wind stirred the candle flame, and for a brief second, it flickered brighter, as if answering. Behind him, unseen, a figure stood in the shadows, watching through the rain, silver eyes glistening with the tears of a man who had lost everything but his vow. In that lonely garden, two souls mourned the same woman. One her child, one her love, both bound by the same silence. And as lightning split the sky once more, the ghosts of the past whispered through the trees, "The story isn't over yet." Time had not been kind to Raphael Vorton. The world still trembled when he spoke. His name still carried fear through the underworld. But the fire in his eyes had dimmed long ago. Power had given him everything, and yet taken everything that mattered. He ruled from behind iron doors, in rooms that smelled of smoke and silence. On his desk lay files, contracts, guns, the tools of his empire. But beside them, almost hidden beneath a glass frame, was a single object no one dared to touch. A piece of burnt fabric, once white, once wrapped around a newborn child. Outside, the rain fell again. It always rained on the night he lost them. Raphael sat by the window, staring at the city below, lights glittering like false stars. He poured himself a drink, though the glass trembled slightly in his hand. Age had begun to claim him. Lines carved deep into his face, silver streaks cutting through his once dark hair. But the weight in his chest was not age. It was memory, narration, gentle, sorrowful tone. Every man in the underworld feared Raphael Vorton. But in the quiet of night, he feared himself. He still heard Elior's voice sometimes, soft, warm, echoing like a ghost through the rain. "Protect our son, even if I'm gone." Those words had become both his curse and his prayer. He had done everything to keep the boy safe, built walls around him, hidden his lineage, erased every trace of the truth. But in doing so, he had also erased himself from his son's life. Lior grew in strength and silence, distant and guarded, just like him. And every time Raphael saw him from afar, he saw Elior's smile in the boy's eyes, and it broke him a little more. There were nights when the Alpha would walk through the ruins of the old garden, the same place HisOmega once sang to the wind. The tree still stood there, gnarled and weathered, its roots clutching the earth like fingers refusing to let go. He would sit beneath it, alone, and whisper into the dark, "I kept my promise, Elior. Our son is alive. But he hates me for it." And the wind would answer in soft rustles, like a sigh, the kind only he could hear. The men in his clan spoke of legacy and power, but Raphael knew better. He had conquered cities, silenced rivals, built an empire of iron and blood, and yet the one thing he couldn't conquer was the past. He wore guilt like armor now, polished, heavy, unremovable. And at night, when he stared into the mirror, he no longer saw the Alpha of legend. He saw a man haunted by a love he couldn't save, and a son he didn't know how to reach. One evening, as he watched the storm from his window, a voice from the door broke his silence. "Sir," said one of his oldest guards softly. "The boy. He reminds me of you." Raphael didn't turn. He simply whispered, more to himself than to anyone, "No. He reminds me of the man I once was, before I learned what it means to destroy what you love." The guard said nothing more. And when the door closed, Raphael poured another glass, watching the rain slide down the window like tears he no longer shed. The world saw a king, but inside those walls lived a ghost, a man who had everything, except the two people he would have given it all for. As the clock struck midnight, Raphael rose, limping slightly as he walked to the old music box on the shelf. It no longer played, its key rusted, its song lost. But he opened it anyway because inside, hidden beneath the broken melody, was a single folded note, yellowed with time. He read the same words he had read 1,000 times before. Elior's handwriting. "If he ever finds you, tell him I forgave you long ago." Raphael's breath shook as he traced the fading ink. He closed his eyes and whispered into the empty room. "You were too good for this world, Elior, and I was never enough for you." Outside, the storm faded into quiet. The Alpha sat in the darkness, a king surrounded by ghosts. His heart buried not in the grave of his enemies, but beside the one man he could never forget. The rain hadn't stopped for days. The sky wept like it remembered something the world had long tried to forget. In a dim, old room at the edge of the city, where shadows clung to cracked walls, Lior sat by a flickering lamp, holding a box that wasn't meant to exist. It had been hidden behind the floorboards of his late caretaker's room, the one man who had always refused to answer questions about his parents. Inside the box, wrapped in cloth gone yellow with age, lay a silver crest marked with a wolf sigil, the insignia of the Vorten Mafia clan, and beneath it, a photograph, a young Omega with soft eyes and a quiet smile, holding a newborn wrapped in white. Beside him stood a man, tall, sharp, dangerous, his hand resting protectively on the Omega's shoulder. Lior froze. He had never seen them before, but the shape of the man's eyes, the dark intensity in them, he had seen that face, in mirrors, every morning. Lior whispering to himself, "No, can't be him, can't be him." He turned the photo over, and there, written in faded ink, "For our son, the child who wasn't meant to exist." The lamp flickered again, wind howling through the cracks, and in that trembling light, everything he thought he knew shattered. He had been told he was an orphan, abandoned, unwanted. But this meant he was a secret, a living crime. In that moment, the walls of his world collapsed. Not with fire or blood. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. In the distance, at the mansion where power slept in silence, Raphael Vorten looked up from his desk, feeling something stir deep inside his chest. A chill like the past calling his name. Blood calls to blood, no matter how far it's buried. And on that night, for the first time in 18 years, father and son shared the same storm. Lior stood at the broken window, wind cutting through him like knives. Tears streaked his face, but his eyes burned with something new. Not just pain, but purpose. "If the world didn't want me to exist," he whispered to the night, "then I'll make sure they remember me." The rain fell harder, lightning flashing across the skyline. And somewhere, miles away, the Mafia Alpha poured himself another glass, unaware that the ghost he thought he'd buried was about to walk through his empire's door. The truth had finally woken, and it carried the fury of 2 generations, a love forbidden, a child unwanted, and a legacy soaked in blood. The heavy doors of the Vorten mansion creaked open. Lior stepped inside, his boots silent against the marble floor. The air smelled of dust, smoke, and power, the scent of a kingdom he had never known, yet that had always claimed him. From the shadows, men emerged, guards, lieutenants, and old faces whose eyes widened at the sight of him. "The boy," one whispered. "He's alive." Lior's silver-gray eyes swept the room. He didn't flinch, didn't bow. "Alive," he said, voice calm, cold, precise. "And I'm here now." A man stepped forward, taller, scarred, one hand resting on a sword. "You shouldn't be here," he said, wary. "You don't know what this place is." "I know exactly what it is," Lior replied. "And whose it is." The men froze, Whispers filled the room. The Alpha had a son. The son had returned. From the staircase above, Raphael appeared. Time had etched lines into his face, but his eyes still burned with the same steel. Lior, he said, voice low. This place, it's not for you. Lior looked up at him, jaw tight. I know who I am, he said. I know what I am, and I know why I'm here. Raphael's fists clenched at his sides. You don't understand the danger, he said, stepping down the stairs. Every man in this clan would kill to keep you from learning the truth. They would. They would have to go through me first, Lior interrupted, stepping closer. I'm not a child anymore. I'm your heir, and I decide who lives and who dies. The room went still. Every shadow seemed to bend toward him, drawn to the same darkness he carried in his blood. One of the old lieutenants finally spoke, voice shaking. The council. They'll never accept this. Lior's smile was small, sharp, and unyielding. Then I'll show them why they have to. Raphael's breath caught. The boy had his eyes and his fire, but the boy also had his mother's heart, defiant, untouchable, unwilling to bow to fear. Lior turned, walking toward the massive windows overlooking the city. Rain lashed against the glass, thunder rolling in the distance. This empire, he said quietly, almost to himself, will remember me. The Alpha followed, silent. He knew that look, that fire, that quiet command. He had seen it once before, in the eyes of a woman he had loved and lost. Lior looked back at him. I'm not asking for your blessing, he said. I'm taking my place. The world may call me a shadow, but shadows are what shape empires. Raphael closed his eyes for a moment, pain and pride twisting together. Then take it, he whispered. But be careful, shadows can consume even the strongest. Lior's lips curved into a determined, almost dangerous smile. I'm ready, he said. Let them try to stand against me. The storm outside raged harder. Lightning cut through the night sky, and inside the Vorton mansion, a new power awakened. A son who would no longer hide, an heir who carried the sins of the past and the fire of revenge in his veins. Smoke curled over the battlefield like a serpent, twisting and choking the sky. Rubble and broken walls littered the ground. The ruins of the old Vorton mansion, shattered in war, fire, and betrayal. Lior moved silently among the debris, his gun raised, eyes scanning every shadow. Every instinct told him that the man ahead, standing in the doorway of what used to be the Grand Hall, was his enemy. And yet, something familiar lingered in the silver-gray eyes, the broad shoulders, the quiet authority. Raphael stood tall, hand resting casually on his weapon. His face was weathered, hard, but his eyes carried the weight of centuries, and a memory Lior didn't want to acknowledge. Lior, Raphael said, voice calm but low, almost a warning. Put the gun down. Lior didn't move. You should have stayed away, he said. His grip tightened on the handle. This is my fight now. Raphael's hand twitched, but he didn't raise his gun. I'm not here to fight you, he said. I'm here to protect you, even if you won't see it. Protect me, Lior spat, his voice shaking with rage. All these years, you hid in shadows while I bled and grew up alone. You left me to survive a world that would have swallowed me whole. The Alpha's jaw tightened. I did what I had to do, Raphael said, quiet, controlled. I kept you alive. Lior's finger moved to the trigger. Time slowed. The world contracted into the space between them. 2 lifetimes of pain, betrayal, and longing hanging in the balance. He pulled. The gun clicked. Empty. Raphael's eyes widened. He stepped forward, slowly, never raising his weapon. You can't shoot me, son, he said, voice breaking. Not now. Not ever. Lior froze. He looked down at the weapon, then back at the man in front of him. The rage that had fueled him for years wavered, replaced by confusion, hurt, and a shred of something he had buried deep inside. Longing. Why? He whispered. Raphael took another step, careful not to close the distance too quickly. "Because I'm your father," he said. "And no matter what you believe, I never wanted this war. I never wanted to lose you." Lior's hand shook. Memories, fragments of stories, a lullaby, a whispered promise, tore through him like lightning. He lowered the gun. Slowly, the storm outside mirrored the one inside. Rain fell in torrents, wind howled through the ruins, and somewhere, far off, a tree, the one his mother had loved, swayed like it had never stopped waiting. Raphael extended a hand, not commanding, not demanding, simply offering. Lior hesitated. Then, trembling, he placed his small, calloused hand in the Alpha's. For a heartbeat, the ruins fell away. The battle, the fire, the pain. All of it disappeared, leaving only two men standing in the rain, broken but still breathing. "You have your mother's heart," Raphael whispered. "And my eyes." Lior swallowed hard. "I have your fire," he said, voice steady now. "And I won't let it consume me, unless you guide it." Lightning split the sky. In that flash, they were not father and son. Not Alpha and Omega. They were survivors. Enemies once, now something fragile, something that could still be rebuilt, if the past would let them. And for the first time in years, Raphael allowed himself to hope. The city breathed below them, lights flickering like scattered embers in the night. From the rebuilt Vorten mansion, Lior and Raphael surveyed the empire. The empire built on blood, fear, and secrets. Lior stood tall, shoulders squared, silver-gray eyes gleaming with a fire that had been nurtured by loss and survival. "Everything your enemies destroyed," he said softly, "we will rebuild, but this time on my terms." Raphael nodded, silent but proud. The Alpha's once unshakable control had been fractured by grief and guilt. Now, in the hands of his son, it was tempered by resilience, the kind of strength forged in absence and pain. Down in the courtyard, loyal lieutenants gathered. Whispers raced like lightning. The heir of shadows returns. The Vorten bloodline awakens. Lior raised his hand. The men fell silent instantly, sensing authority that was earned, not inherited. "I am Lior Vorten," he said, voice steady, carrying the weight of history. "I am the son who should not have existed, but I do. And I will not fail." A guard stepped forward, bowing. "Yes, heir. We follow you." Raphael's eyes softened. The son he had once protected in secret was now his equal in power, in presence, in purpose. The heir he had fought so hard to keep alive had finally claimed his place. Later, in the private study, Raphael handed Lior a worn journal, Elior's handwriting still visible on its yellowed pages. "For our son," Raphael said quietly. "Your mother wrote this for you, before she was taken from us." Lior opened it, reading silently. Tears streaked his face as he traced every word. It was a map of love, hope, and courage, a reminder of the sacrifice that had given him life. Raphael watched him, feeling the weight of his own past lift, just slightly. "I failed her," he murmured. "I failed you both. But you can fix what I could not." Lior looked up, determination and sorrow in equal measure. "I will," he said, "and I will honor her. And you, if you let me." Raphael extended his hand, this time not just in warning or protection, but in partnership. "I'll follow you," he said, "side by side. But know this world will test you. Harder than you can imagine." Lior took it, their hands clasped, bloodline to bloodline, Alpha to heir. From the balcony above, the city stretched endlessly, alive, dangerous, unforgiving. But for the first time in decades, the Vorten name was not only feared, it was guided by the son who had survived the impossible. A son who carried love, vengeance, and legacy in equal measure. And in the quiet moments, when the storm had passed and only candlelight remained, father and son sat together, speaking of the past, of what was lost, and of the future they would forge. A world shaped not by fear, but by the unbreakable bond of blood and heart. The night was thick with fog, curling around the streets like fingers searching for prey. Lior stood on the balcony of the Vorten mansion, eyes scanning the city below. Every light, every shadow, every whispered rumor carried danger. Yet he no longer feared it. He had survived worse. He had been shaped by worse. Raphael stepped up beside him, shoulders squared, silent as always. "You've changed the way the men look at us," he said. "They respect you, but some still doubt." "I don't need them to believe in me," Lior replied, jaw tight. "I need them to fear what I'm capable of." A shadow moved in the street below, a man in a dark coat, watching. Lior's fingers twitched near the pistol at his side. "He's waiting," Raphael said, "for a mistake. One misstep, and it could cost everything." Lior's gaze didn't waver. "Then let him wait," he said. "I won't give him a single advantage." Inside the mansion, whispers traveled faster than footsteps. A letter arrived, slipped under the Alpha study door. The seal was broken. Inside, 3 words scorched onto the paper. "He knows everything." Raphael's face hardened. "Who?" he demanded. Lior read over his shoulder, eyes narrowing. "Someone from the past," he said softly. "Someone who hasn't forgotten and hasn't forgiven." For the first time, father and son stood together, their unspoken bond a shield against the unseen enemy. "Then we prepare," Raphael said. "No one will touch you. No one will touch this empire. I won't allow it." Lior's jaw tightened. "You won't need to protect me," he said. "I've spent my whole life surviving what the world threw at me. If they want to test me, let them try. I'll show them what the son of the Vorten Alpha can do." Hours later, in the quiet of the mansion's war room, Lior laid out maps, letters, and intercepted messages. Every enemy, every traitor, every lingering threat, all tracked, all accounted for. Raphael watched, astonished at the precision, the ruthlessness, the unflinching clarity of the boy who had become a man. "You've learned fast," Raphael said. Lior looked up, eyes blazing. "I had to," he said. "I am the son who shouldn't exist. And now, I intend to rewrite every rule this world has set for me." A long silence followed. Then Raphael nodded. "Good," he said, "because the world doesn't wait for the unprepared. And neither do I." That night, father and son stood together on the balcony again, watching the city hum below. No words were needed. The storm had passed, but the tension lingered. A promise was made in silence, stronger than any oath. We survive, we fight, and we endure together. And somewhere in the darkness, a figure in the shadows retreated, unseen, but not defeated. The war for the Vorten legacy had only just begun. The night sky burned with fire and storm. The last of the rival clans had gathered outside the Vorten mansion, weapons drawn, intent clear. Destroy the heir, erase the Alpha, claim the Empire. Lior stood at the top of the steps, silver-gray eyes cold and sharp. Raphael appeared beside him, silent, imposing. The Alpha whose presence alone had once commanded armies. Now, father and son stood together, a united force the world had never imagined. "This ends tonight," Lior said, voice steady. "No one survives who threatens what we built." Raphael's gaze swept over the assembled men. "We fight together," he said, "side by side, as it should have been from the beginning." The enemy hesitated, the Vorten bloodline's reputation, and the fire in the son's eyes, giving pause to even the boldest. The battle began with a storm of bullets, shouts, and fire. Lior moved like shadow and steel, precise, deadly, and untouchable. Every attack met with counter, every threat neutralized with ruthless efficiency. Raphael moved behind him, a phantom protector, guiding, commanding, and crushing anyone who dared to reach his son. Together, they were unstoppable. 2 generations of strength, tempered by loss and sharpened by pain. At the heart of the chaos, a figure emerged, the mastermind who had orchestrated years of secrecy and betrayal. Lior's eyes narrowed. "You?" he hissed. The man raised his gun, but before he could fire, Raphael was there, gun raised, hand steady. "Not today," Raphael said. Lior stepped forward, weapon trained, hands steady. And never again. The enemy hesitated, and that hesitation was all they needed. Hours later, the battlefield was silent. Smoke drifted over shattered walls, over blood-soaked earth, over victory hard-earned. Father and son stood side by side, breathing, exhausted, and unbroken. Lior lowered his weapon, eyes meeting Raphael's. "You saved me," he said softly. "You saved this empire." Raphael shook his head, voice thick with emotion. "No, Lior, you saved me. You saved us both. I was too late for her, but I won't be too late for you." Lior stepped forward, placing his hand on Raphael's shoulder. "I know," he said, "and I forgive you for everything." For the first time in decades, Raphael smiled, truly smiled. Not as Alpha, not as ruler, but as a man who had been broken and finally made whole. Days later, the mansion was rebuilt, not as a fortress of fear, but as a home. The Vorton legacy had been reforged, stronger, tempered by blood, loss, and love. Father and son walked the halls together, teaching, planning, guiding. Enemies were crushed, allies restored, and the name Vorton carried not just fear, but respect, earned through justice, loyalty, and heart. In the garden, beneath the tree that had survived the fire, Lior lit a candle. He whispered to the night, to the memory of the mother who had given everything, to the love that had shaped him. "We're alive. We survived. And we'll honor you, always." Raphael joined him, placing a hand over his son's. The storm had passed. The blood had been shed. The legacy was redeemed. And for the first time, the Vortons were not just survivors. They were family.